Hello, everyone. Belmont here, aka Pete. I hope you're doing well. Today we have a really special guest, a friend who I've got to meet through the Tolkien community, and we're going to be talking about a new book that she is just about to publish at the end of this month. It's called Into the Heart of Middle Earth, and I just want to introduce her real quick. This is Tea with Tolkien, aka Kaitlyn. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm good. This is so exciting.
Right? I'm just want to say how awesome and excited I was when you reached out to me to talk about this. Because twofold. One, I love everything you do with Lord of the Rings and Tolkien himself. I love your Silmarillion guide. It's one of the first things I actually came across before I was even a content creator. But I love being able to promote anything any of the fellow Tolkien creators are working on, be it book, art, comedy, what have you, some funny parody song. I love anything Tolkien, so I really appreciate everything you do for this community.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the
Mhm.
best part about the Tolkien community online is like getting to share everyone else's stuff because everyone comes from different places and has different niches, and it's just like such a wealth of content out there.
I know, right? There's even like cooking channels now. I saw someone, she was doing the architecture of Bag End. And I was like, wow, we're actually getting into this now. This is what I'm talking about.
I love that. That's so cool.
Right? So yeah. But let's get right into it. You have a new book coming out at the end of the month. What was really the turning point for you from like being like a content creator? We're out here, we make reels, we're making like any like funny like tweet we could put out there or message or thread or what have you. What like was that turning point where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna write a book.
Well, it wasn't my idea at all.
Really?
It was something that like kind of, I love writing, so maybe the thought of writing a book was kind of somewhere in the back of my mind, but it was something that I felt like I was not capable of, maybe. And then my publisher reached out. I mean, of course, it was an editor that I had worked with before doing some freelance stuff. And he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "Oh, like I could do it." And I felt like Bilbo when Gandalf's like knocking at the door and like they're offering him an adventure. He's like, no, no, I couldn't do that. It'll make me late for dinner. And but what if? But what if? And so that was like the beginning of it, where I was like, I could do this. And I think I feel very much like Bilbo in that situation.
Oh, yeah, writing is one of those things that I find incredibly frightening. And it's not like a fun fact about me. I was a history major, so all I did was write in college and write before and after. But yeah, the whole turning point of just being like, even if it's someone else asking you, like, hey, I'm gonna do this. How much organization do you think went into that like final, moment where you sat down, you started typing? Or was it just something like you're gonna just, stream this, let's go, I'm gonna sit down and just start writing something.
It had to be super organized. So even before we got like when we're doing a book deal, what we work on beforehand is called a proposal, and I basically had to explain everything about myself. Like, here's who I am, here's everything that I do, and then I had to include like a super detailed outline of the book, and then I had to write a couple of chapters as like a sample of my writing, and so that took a couple of months. And that was when it really started to feel real. I was like kind of pulling from everything I've written before and thinking like what really resonated with me, what did I enjoy writing, what do I feel like helped other people, and kind of pulling that all together. So it was a lot of like sifting through my own thoughts and the work that I've done in the past and pulling it into like an outline. That was the first step. And then after that, you kind of form the chapters, and it's simple, but it's not easy.
No, not at all. Um, and I wish it was as easy for Tolkien when he was trying to publish the Silmarillion. I shouldn't say easy, but like that he could just like write a complex, like or a minimized version of the Silmarillion and just be like, hey, and everyone would have liked it, but no. He did do something similar though. He wrote the letter to Milton Waldman, which like really fleshes out a very descriptive version of the Silmarillion that Christopher used to write the published version of the Silmarillion. So I like that little parallel there with the two of you having to like put yourself up front with everything right there, even before you've done like the heavy lifting with the book.
Yeah, like Waldman letter is almost like Tolkien's proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, Wow, that's so interesting. I'm learning so much because I'm like never really looked into writing a book myself. But one thing I want to get into like the nitty gritty of the book now. But one thing I really enjoyed is the common through line of the book, where it's like this guide to being more Tolkienian, and even at the start asks you the question like, well, you have a house on Backshot Row, like how to really experience not just like what we see in the movies or even read in the books, but how to truly like be the epitome of what a hobbit is. And it is a lifestyle. What made you really like focus in on that as the starting point, like where it's like, hey, a lot of people relate to this character or this character, and you do go through that in the book where it's like you discuss even towards the end, the grief of Elrond. Why start with a hobbit? Why do you find that so important in the idea of like the Tolkien legendarium?
Well, I feel like when you're reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, that's also where Tolkien starts. And so
Mm,
that's kind of a familiar starting point for people who do love Tolkien. And especially in The Lord of the Rings, we start in the Shire because we're going to have to leave the Shire. And Frodo's love for the Shire is kind of what grounds him in his whole journey and what propels him to keep taking the next step forward. And so, as readers of The Lord of the Rings, we spend a lot of time in the Shire at the beginning of the book so that we can like fully immerse ourselves in its goodness and its beauty and really understand why Frodo loves it so much and why it's something that is kind of like worth fighting for. And so I wanted to kind of make the same structure for the journey with the book, where we're starting in the Shire, we're kind of starting in our own hearts, kind of because the Shire is almost like a foundation for the hobbits, and they're able to then go out and sacrifice or take big steps or go through terrible grief. And so I kind of wanted us to have like the same journey as the hobbits do.
mm. And it's a slow start. A lot of people don't realize, and I think that's where that complaint about all he talks about is trees, where the start of the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, is very much the first three chapters are very Shire centric. It's a long time for them to even get to that point where we get to the Old Forest and then we get the Bree. So I kind of enjoyed that too, where I always explain people when they read the Lord of the Rings, I'm like, the importance of reading The Hobbit is that we're dealing with a very small bubble of a world that is expanding before you as you step forward or as you read and progress through the book. And it's one of my favorite parts of Tolkien. And I like how you've mirrored that a little in your own start of your book, where you don't get into like you start off and we're just talking about the Fellowship, and then by the end of it, you're talking about Estelle and Amdir, very like two important themes within like Tolkien's world with like Finrod and Andreth, and it's like and I love that. I love that transition because that's like very deep lore right there. You even talk a little more about the histories too in later points. So like when talking about like the Inklings and the idea of the straight road, and I forget the term you use in Irish, but that whole aspect of it being like the opening to like the time travel aspect of the story, which
Mm-hmm.
they challenge themselves to do, and I think the Notion papers.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I love that you like your transition into that is like inviting people as they read to not only like look at the books themselves and like have like a reflection, right, of like your character against someone like Eowyn or like Merry or Pippin. But you also get into this whole idea of like how can I really invite someone to enjoy the deeper lore. So, and I think that's one of my favorite parts about this your book so far. Like just from going through it once, I want to read it again after this and just like find some more to talk about. But there is like one line that really stood out to me, and maybe you could talk to me about it because I would love for others to understand the purpose. I know I'm like pulling a line out of your
I'm on the
book,
edge of
like,
my seat. I'm like, which line is
um,
it?
without your hue, the beauty of the world is diminished, and its work left unfinished. And I love this line because as someone, a lot of people don't know this, is I've had like a lot of loss in my life. Lost my father, a close best friend who I grew up with, and like several other people, friends of mine, in like a very quick time period. And I deal with like, I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety, I deal with questioning like of my role here. And, just to really preface this, removing even idea of like, us in our beliefs and our like where we stand just as like human beings finding purpose in like everyday life or just work or in family, what was your goal with like this line in particular? Because I love the comparison of color. We talk about music and color a lot in the Legendarium, Lord of the Rings, and Silmarillion, and I feel like this is a message that a lot of people miss when they read these books.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's kind of like a twofold meaning with that quote. Uh, Tolkien talks in a poem called Mythopoeia about how, and of course I can't remember the line, but he's basically talking about how like there's like Tolkien's belief in God is that like God is this one light, and then through that we're like refracted through that to create like a giant rainbow of color, like a prism. And so each of us is like a different part of this kind of, it sounds cheesy when you call it like a rainbow, but it's like we're each a part of this huge spectrum of color. And so you can imagine each of us as being a different hue. And without like the color green, the rainbow is incomplete. And so that's kind of a way that I think of it. The world needs your color and who you are, and each of us brings something to the world. And without each of us, there's a loss in that. But then I also think, and I kind of try to touch on this in the book, there's something interesting about Bilbo. He's not just a Baggins, he's not just a Took, he's both. And both Baggins and Took have these unique perspectives and tendencies, and the Tooks are more curious and adventurous. The Baggins are very respectable, but they have their own qualities as well. And so you think about how each of us kind of comes from something unique. We're all different. We come from like different ethnicities, different countries. We have different talents. Our parents have different trades, and so like each of us is so unique in that way. Like my dad's side of the family is Italian. My mom's is like Irish, and so I come from that. And so that's kind of the idea that I was wanting to convey. Like we're each so unique, and there's so much potential for goodness, and for us to be able to make like changes to the world that haven't ever been made before.
Oh, I love that because I come from an interesting background too, where it's like I'm American, I come off white passing, but I'm actually Puerto Rican and Mexican, and I'm Irish and English, and a bit of a couple other things I don't even know. And I think a lot of us forget how important each one of us are to at least one person in the world, or you know, that we could have an impact on other lives as well as just situations, and we could live a very unique experience and not have it be something of grandeur. We don't need to reach for those type of things. We can just be small hands at work, while someone larger is out looking elsewhere. That's Tolkien kind of like just to summarize it. But even like last night, we watched like something like the Super Bowl. Bad Bunny even said something incredibly similar. And like I'm Puerto Rican, I love seeing that whole performance and the idea that love is the answer to a lot of the problems of today's world. And I also think that acknowledgement that you're needed here is very important. I think that's very important in today's world. And I was surprised to come across something so early in the book that had such like depth. I want to say depth to it. And not saying the rest of the book doesn't. I'm just saying like you caught
Yeah.
me. You caught me good. Like you got me really interested in reading the book. So thank you for talking about that line because that one, like I was reading it a couple days ago late at night. And I was like, wow, yeah, I love those type of lines because I always those lines stand out to me too. Like I forget one line in the Silmarillion that speaks of the fountain of joy and the idea of how like even mixed with sorrow, it makes the world more beautiful. And it's interesting because you even get into it later on when you talk about Frodo, and it's something I want to like transition to is that you really focus on the idea of Frodo throughout the book, especially the second half, where you start discussing the idea of failure, and the comparison to Sam, failure, and how sometimes we have to let things be to fate, that we can't control every aspect of our lives. But something else that stood out to me at that time was your comments on social media because you've been such a pillar to the community for like years at this point now. And you've been heavily involved with, everything from book clubs to, premieres for Rings of Power. But you do make the comparison of Denethor and the Palantir to the idea of social media and like us being like not I don't want to say forced, but living in an echo chamber ourselves with like, viewing certain atrocities or, hearing certain political views or non-political views or even Lord of the Rings stuff, and it's all over the place. How do you feel about, social media, and how did you like feel writing this book and thinking about like it being like a comparison to, your social media identity?
I think social media has the power to be so, so bad. Just like the Palantir, it can really like destroy your soul if you let it. It can take over your life. It can have very real negative like consequences. So it's something that is like you have to be so careful with it, and think about it daily, like how am I using this tool, because that's all it is at the end of the day. It's a tool, and are we going to be using it for good, or are we going to be using it for something terrible? And so I've always tried to be very positive and uplifting with my social media. It's definitely hard sometimes, but it's just it's an extension of who I am, I guess. It's of course it's not the full picture of me, but it's like this is my heart. My goal here is to help people read Tolkien, to bring you closer to Tolkien, because I believe that Tolkien can change your world and your life and the way that you perceive things. And so that's kind of how I try to approach everything I do with social media, is like, what's my goal here? Who am I trying to help? I try not to be like self-serving with it, or let the doom get to me, too much.
Um, that's great. And I have a follow-up question. Being that like this, your goal is social media, do you feel like you wanted that to transition to the book, or do you have a different goal when you had like finally put the draft down and it was approved by your publisher and they were like, we're gonna publish this? What were you like? Well, I really hope someone gains this from this book.
Oh,
Or was
yeah,
that
it's
like a little
totally
bit?
the same. Yeah, I feel like my book is almost like everything I've done with Tea with Tolkien, like everything I've done with Tea with Tolkien, and then you like boil it down, and there's the book. And so it's like I tried to make it kind of like the most accessible, um, kind of just something you can pick up, read a couple chapters whenever you get a chance, come back to it later on, type of thing, because there's so much to it. Um, but it really is kind of just an extension of what I do with Tea with Tolkien.
Almost like a concentrate of Tea with Tolkien in a
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
A little
yeah.
something to really, enjoy for yourself. One other thing I do want to talk about, and this is like I don't really want to. I really don't bring up religion a lot when discussing the books, because I like to keep it as open ended as possible for others to enjoy. But there is something to be said that Tolkien's life is heavily, heavily influenced by the events that played out, and of course his religion. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is that you actually reference a lot of different saints and members of the community, or the church, I should say, in its history, like Thomas Aquinas, or I believe her name was Bernadette, as well as forgetting the first one that you referenced, but the multiple is my point. I apologize about that. But overall, what was your goal with some of that? Did you want it to be a kind of a twofold, where like we see some history of Tolkien's life that influenced his writing, or do you want to show parallels how one can learn from these historical figures? And I say historical very loosely because, I know that some were canonized and sainthood occurred. And, I'm just saying like they did have quite an impact on, like, for example, Thomas Aquinas, I studied in college, like huge impact on the idea of moral law and natural law and human rights, which I love. It's one of my favorite things that we can pull that from something religious and have like context in the contemporary world.
Yeah, the first my first intention, I think, with bringing the saints in is that I think it's very, I mean, I find it fun to study this
Mm.
type of thing. When you look at Tolkien's life, he also found it fun, and he studied a lot of the saints, and he knew a lot about them. And so I found kind of one reason I wanted to bring them in is because a lot of them he actually talks about in his letters, or his And we also know his personal library. He had a lot of books about the saints. So that's kind of like a cool, almost like a biographical little tidbit of information. Like you mentioned, Saint Bernadette, he talks about her in his letters. He went and saw a movie about Saint Bernadette, and he apparently loved it because he references it in like four different letters after he sees it. He like can't stop talking about how much he loved this movie about her. And then he also compares her to Frodo in another letter, which I found really interesting. So it's kind of like fun little biographical tidbits about Tolkien. But then the other reason I wanted to include them is because I see them as kind of like practical examples of the different themes or virtues that we're talking about in the chapters. Like these saints are real people, real historical people who lived, and there are a lot of things that we can learn from them. And I think, especially in a lot of ways, some of Tolkien's characters kind of represent, or not really represent, but reflect similar traits as some of these saints. So, and another one that I don't think you mentioned Saint Brendan the Navigator. Tolkien has a poem
Yes.
about him in the Notion Club papers too. So like, yeah, that's another just a cool connection between Tolkien's writings and then his faith and the way that he lived it. So I find that stuff really interesting. So I definitely wanted to include it.
I find it really interesting too, and just not like the most religious person. I was raised Catholic actually, not practicing anymore. But I love those aspects because there's history there and there's moral lessons. I think moral lessons matter a lot, especially with the fact that you bring up like you bring up Job and Jonah and like those stories too. They're very biblical stories, and I know that Tolkien did a translation of one of those. Or I think it was Jonah,
Yeah,
right?
he
That
he worked on translations for both of them.
really, really,
Yeah, for
really.
the Jerusalem Bible. I think it was, I'm getting them mixed up now, but one of them he did like the whole book, and then one of them he just helped with bits of it. But yeah, he did for both.
A lot of people don't know that about Tolkien. I mean, they know that he was religious, but they don't know how, dedicated he was to not only, pursuing Anglo-Saxon or old languages and myths, but also his own religion and helping out with that as well. Um, so I got one last thing I want to talk about, from your books, because we could talk about it all day. But there is one thing that really stood out to me, and I had to ask you because I was like, she probably has the answer. You do these lovely things at the end of every chapter where you ask about something that you had to give up. Go out there and buy a small plant, grow something with your own hands. But then you have these ones about the hobbits, and you're like, choose 5 out of the 10. All right, and now I want to ask you, what 5 did you choose? And I'll tell you my 5.
Someone else asked me this in another interview, and I was like, I
You
didn't.
gotta be ready.
I was. That's like asking a teacher if they did their homework. I'm like, I wrote the lesson. I have a copy of the book right here. I'm gonna grab it, and I'll see what mine are. Well, what are
What do
yours?
you got? What do you got? Okay, okay, okay. I'll read you my 5. And doing this is like these are things you should instill yourself into yourself to or that you want to instill into yourself to be more hobbit like. I said perseverance, growth, conviction, humility, and I think the last one was courage.
Mm,
Courage to do all those things. So and I felt that. It felt very Sam coded. Very
yeah.
Sam coded.
Okay, mine. If I were to pick, I would do stewardship, rootedness, peace,
Mm,
growth, and clemency.
nice, nice.
So that would probably be mine.
I like the stewardship one because you actually bring it up in the book too. You talk about the stewardship of Gandalf and his purpose and the comparison to Saruman and like how Saruman's fall to evil. Um, but I think like I don't want to like talk about everything in the book. I want to ask a couple more questions outside of the book, just some fun ones. But is there anything that like you really, if there's one thing that you want, like chapter wise, like one chapter out of the book that you feel like stands out from all the others, which one do you think it is?
Ooh, it'd probably be the chapter on hope. Just because I think that's probably the thing that we need the most. The world oftentimes feels so dark and hopeless. Especially like as you mentioned with social media. The more we get into social media, we see just endlessly horrible things happening in every corner of the world constantly. You know, I could be on my phone for 24 hours a day and I would still not be able to like finish reading the terrible news that is out there. And so hope as a antidote to despair is just so huge. It's an anchor. It's something that we all need. And so like that's probably the big one.
I like that. I like that. And you bring up the idea of Estelle a few times towards the end of the books. And, like I said at the start, I love that you referenced such a deep, deep theme in the Legendarium. But do have a couple other questions I want to ask you. Just like, Lord of the Rings fan to Lord of the Rings fan.
Yes.
All right. If you had to choose, who is your least favorite character in the movies and why?
Least favorite, like I dislike them or like I
Yeah.
don't.
You dislike either the depiction, the actor, the character in themselves from both book and movies. This is like
Is this
we're
Lord of the
airing it
Rings
out.
movies or the Hobbit movies or all of the
Either.
movies?
Let's do Lord of
I
the Rings movies
okay,
because
I was gonna say
The Hobbit movies get like a little
I was
funky. They get a little
I
funky.
have some thoughts about the Hobbit movies. Yeah, the Lord of the
We all
Rings
do.
movies, my least favorite character is got to be this is hard. Well, who's
Hard, huh?
yours?
Wow. My least favorite character in how they display them. That could be really controversial. Can I choose like just a portion of a character? Like
It's
just
your
one
question.
I know it's my question. I'm changing the rules. So I think the start when we first meet Theoden, I was not a fan of it. And I'll tell you why. I liked it as a kid. But as I grew older and I read the books even more and more, I disliked that he raised his sword to Grima, you know? Because he doesn't do that in the books. He
Hmm.
offers Grima peace and to like be a man of Rohan. He could still be a man of Rohan. That's who he is. Even though like we find out in the Unfinished Tales that Tolkien was like, Grima is evil. He is just evil dude. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no good, evil. Even the Nazgul knew. I'm like, the Nazgul knew? They're like, yeah, they do. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I
Tolkien's
think that
like, yeah. Tolkien's like,
there's
I
no
don't believe
absolute
in
evil.
absolute evil except for Grima.
He sucks. It's like, yeah, he kind of does, doesn't he? He's the one who tells the Nazgul where the Shire is. That's what the thing you learned from the Unfinished Tales. It's like, come on, man, why do you got to make him even more evil?
Oof,
It's
that
a
guy.
bad mood that day, weren't you, Tolkien? Um, but yeah, I think that person. I could probably think of another person, but give me a sec. Give me a sec.
I would say I think I have mine. I think my least favorite movie character is Elrond because they made him so like he's just like men are weak and I hate everybody and you know
And I raised those men for like thousands of years.
yeah
I've
like
raised them.
they just made him kind of like one note almost and like he's just kind of like he's almost just like Arwen's dad who's grumpy. Um,
Kinda. He looks grumpy too, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
he has that grumpy expression on for the whole movie, for all of the movies. So, yeah, maybe because when you read Tolkien, he's like, Elrond's home was so lovely, and Elrond is as kind as summer, and he fosters hope, and, like, and then in the movie, he's just
Literally.
like, yeah, literally fosters Estelle. And so, yeah, in the movie, he's just like mad and like he's like just so over it. So maybe I don't know. They could have done a little bit better with Elrond.
I like his scenes with Arwen, but like, yeah, serious Elrond, like, and like, I love how people used to call him Agent Elrond because of like the actor back in the day, and I was like, damn, you guys are so hateful with this. But I like him, but your point exactly. He does not feel like, I hate to say it, Robert Romero. Like, he's just
Yeah,
Rings of Power has just you can say whatever you want about the show, but Elrond,
he's perfect. Yeah, Rob is like the perfect Elrond, and I think a lot of people are coming to see that Elrond has like this warmth to him through Robert's portrayal.
yeah, I'm so excited because we've heard rumors swirling about season three. We are waiting very nicely. Maybe Elros and Elrond will see each other.
Who
Being that
knows?
I'm a man of Numenor, I am quite excited. So, okay,
Who
cool.
knows? Yeah.
Let me think of I had another question lined up. If I know you're married. I'm married as well. If you could marry anyone in the books, like any of the books, Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, Lord of the Rings, who would you
Oh
marry
no.
and why?
I was gonna just say Faramir, of course, but then you threw in the Silmarillion, and now my mind is spinning. I mean, like any of the elves, like they all go die, so I guess I wouldn't want to marry Fingolfin because then I'd be a widow. Celebrimbor, I mean, he's so cool. I feel like me and Celebrimbor would be like good friends, maybe. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with Faramir. I feel like that's a solid choice. I don't want to change my answer too much.
I mean, I'd probably choose Faramir too. I'd be like, heck yeah. He's a pretty stand-up
Yeah,
guy.
he's like
Pretty
the
straightforward
ideal
with
man.
Eowyn.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, Eowyn, you're really cool. You want to just hanging out because you're like really beautiful. It's like, okay, dude. We're really laying it down thick, aren't you?
I know I'm
Um,
not Aragorn, but would you consider marrying me? And she's like, I'm not your trad wife. And then he's like, but I don't want a trad wife. And then she's like,
that's why I
okay.
like you. Okay, dude. And she's like, yeah, you're not a guy from Rohan. She's thinking in her head like, it's kind of better than all the guys from Rohan. It's like,
It works
okay.
out in the end. Yeah. They had to do some debating.
Now I got to think myself. Man, there's a lot of people. Would I say Galadriel? Probably, maybe.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah.
but if I like had to be honest, if I could be like, whatever, the most ideal partner, like just speaking in general, like I say Galadriel for myself for obvious reasons because she's just such a badass. But more so because also in her character and like what she goes through. But if you had to choose anyone, I'd say Beleg. Beleg, the elf, would be the most
Yeah.
ideal partner if I had to say
He's
anyone.
so devoted.
Right? So devoted that he'd follow this dude who is
Yeah.
obviously like a wreck of
Yeah.
a human. And I mean, he means well. I dislike when people are like, Turin's a bad guy. I'm like, Turin is confused.
He's going through it. He's having a hard time.
This man, like, and I think people forget how much, like, and just to comment on that, I do enjoy that part of the story a lot. A lot of people know I like the story of Turin, not so much for like Turin, but this idea of how much we could have our lives shaped by grief, you know?
Hmm.
Grief and pain can go both two ways. And that's why I love the story of Tor and Turin, because they're two people, opposite backgrounds. One grew up in a cave and then later on as a thrall, one as an elven prince, but one he fails, even with all the tools handed to him, because he allowed this grief to drive him and this anger, which comes from this grief, you know? So yeah, but then there's Beleg. Loves him to death, literally go anywhere with him
Yeah,
to
he's
his
like,
own
no,
fault.
like I swear it's good if you come home. And he's like, no, I can't come home. I can't. I'm an
You
outlaw
see, I'm
now.
going through like my emo phase. I'm
Yeah,
moody.
he's like,
It's like
it's
I'm an elf.
fine. You can come
I don't
back.
get
It's
that.
okay. He's like, no, I can't.
Just imagine being Bella, because like you know about elven life cycles. Elves are like incredibly intelligent, like as they're young. They like reach maturity around 100 years, human solar years, right? Something like that.
Something like that.
And like then you're like alive for 3,000 years, 2,000 years. I think because I'm pretty sure Belleg is like fairly old. He's fairly old. He's there at the start of Doriath, so he's at least over several hundred years old. And then like you're just dealing with a human, like this man who you've known since he was like 10 years old, and he's throwing another fit. And you're like, damn, I really wish I could relate to this. I can't, but I'm here for you.
I
Like,
almost imagine it like when like a preschooler is like having a tantrum and you're just like, oh, buddy, like we'll get through this.
like they're 3 or 4 and they're a toddler, but they know English, so like they're saying words to you, but the words are like so confusing. Like I just don't get why you wouldn't give me some avocado. It's like 'cause I don't have any avocado. I don't have any.
We'll
I'm at
get
a
through this,
school,
buddy. Yeah.
but why? It's like I don't know. But okay. So I like your choice, Faramir. I choose Galadriel, but we're both throwing Beleg out there for your
Yeah, these are
consideration.
pretty
Like,
yeah, our answers are pretty basic, unfortunately, but like there's a reason that they're common.
I mean, there is Eoreth too. I mean, I'd go on a date with her. She'd talk a lot, a lot. But I'd listen. I'd love to listen. She'd tell me some, sweet lore about South Gondor. Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
I
it'd be
enjoy
fun.
that. Maybe. Depends. Okay, so favorite adaptation. outside of Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power. Just remove both of those.
Outside of the Rings of Power.
I know, right? There's still like some
Now it's hard.
movies, audiobooks, cartoons, and stuff like that.
Audiobooks for sure then. I love the Rob Inglis Lord of the Rings
Really?
audiobooks. They are my favorite. And I can't listen to the Andy Serkis ones because my mind has been so conditioned to the other ones that when I've tried playing the Andy Serkis audiobooks and I'm just like, what is this? What is this? It's not correct. I feel like how old people are like, you can't disturb their routines. Like, I can't. I just love these audiobooks. I can't try another one.
I mean, I'm just as bad because I don't listen. I used to listen to the Rob Inglis one, but now I listen to the Phil Dragash one, a theatrical
Oh,
audiobook. And it's like it's now melded my love of the movies and the books because it uses like music from the movies and his voice acting is reminiscent of like the movies' voices, but he's playing out the whole book.
that's
And I'm
cool. I haven't
like,
even heard of that.
dude, you gotta check it out. It's so
Nice.
cool. And then we have like Jordan Redis now with his, landscapes.
Yeah.
And I'm not upset, but I bought the Silmarillion one, and it's awesome. But it's to the Andy Serkis book. And I'm like, what
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Martin Shaw? My man
Yeah.
Martin Shaw who can't pronounce a damn thing.
I love his audiobook. Yeah,
So
I
good.
learned how to pronounce everything so wrong thanks to him. I
Outlaw.
like could not. He yeah, that's a big thing. But then Andy Serkis doesn't say everything correct either. So
No.
there's really no winning with a Silmarillion audiobook. But at the same time, they're all good, so you're always winning.
Fair, fair. Now, if I had to choose anything outside an audiobook, it would have to be the Rankin Bass The Hobbit. With a shout out to the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings. It's just absolutely fantastic for what it is. Hilarious.
I love how weird those adaptations are. You're just like, what was happening in these people's minds? I love them.
I think the most jarring thing is possibly the elves in The Hobbit. I mean, like, not only do they have, like, I don't want to say Swedish accents, they have some accent. And it's like, then you have Elrond, and he's normal. He's a normal dude. And I'm like,
Is that
what?
because he's half elven, maybe?
I guess they're like trying to say something. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Because we meet elves. Do we meet elves in Return of the King? The Rankin Bass one?
I don't
I could have sworn
remember.
there's elves in there. I mean, Elrond's there again.
It's been such a long time since I've watched them. I'm just always watching Rings of Power. I guess that's
Do
the
you
only
do you
thing.
watch Rings of Power a lot like that?
I have
I
it like on all the time. Yeah,
really.
I just like if I'm cleaning or like if I'm working, I put it on the background. I have it playing like on a constant loop.
I tried getting my wife to watch it, and she couldn't do the second season. And I was
What?
like, "Why?" She was like, "I'm just too depressed. Too depressed." She's at
It
like
is sad.
the Taco Region, and like they're just like the armies have just shown up. I could see it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's understandable.
it's been really sad. It's like I looking back on it, I watched the second season recently, and I was like, "This is really sad."
The whole thing, yeah. There's
And
not like I mean, but that's all the whole second age really. There's like not a lot of joy happening.
maybe a little bit in
Here
Numenor,
and
but then it kind of goes
there.
downhill after 800
Yeah, and
for
I was gonna
second
say
age.
maybe season three will be more joyful, and I was like, no.
What do we have on? We have like the War with the Elves. We're gonna see the Battle of the Gwyffalo. Numenor will show up, the replacement of Minas Tirith and Círdan with, probably Ar-Pharazôn and whoever else. Probably not Kevin. Not Kevin. Kevin's not a
You
warrior.
never know.
Kevin's gonna kind of a bum. Anyways, are you excited about the time jump in Rings of Power?
I guess. I mean, it has to happen at some point because stuff has to kind of get cooking. So yeah, I mean, I feel like neutral about the time jump, but I feel like it's kind of something that has to happen. We have to have probably multiple time jumps down the line.
I agree. I don't know what they're gonna do with Theo. I mean, the Witch King, or I mean Theo, whatever. But overall, yeah, they gotta make him older, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Couple more questions, and I'm gonna let you off the hook. But I want to comment on something first. I like how you have Barad-dûr, and I got Rivendell in my background. See that? matching.
Yes, I did. I saw that. Yeah, this thing took like a full year to build.
What?
And I am like, I never want to build Legos again after this.
So where are you gonna put Minas Tirith? You're
That's
not gonna
not,
do it?
that's not happening.
We'll see about
I don't
that.
have any room. Where would it go? I don't even know. Like finding a spot for this was hard enough. And I have it
I
glued together because I was so
you
scared it was
glued
gonna.
it?
I did. I glued it. I know that's
I
like
didn't know that.
a crime with Legos, but I did because what am I gonna do if that thing breaks? I'm not rebuilding it.
I mean, as long as the foundation's good and you got the one ring, you could rebuild it, right? That's how it
No,
works.
I will absolutely not.
Okay. Another question I wanted to ask you. I know it's not book related, but I figured we could have some fun with it. What is the most common comment that you see on social media? Not that like irks you, but like makes you laugh.
You mean like directed at me or like?
Yeah, yeah. As a social media digital creator,
A lot of people assume that I'm being paid by Amazon to like promote the Rings of
you
Power.
aren't. That's good.
So a lot of like comments like that about how like I don't know like that like I am being paid by them, and then that meme that's like you guys are getting paid. I was
Yeah.
like no, or it's like oh your check's in the mail. I'm just waiting, still waiting at my mailbox for the check. So that
Right.
yeah that comes a lot comes up a lot.
How silly. Mine is everyone gets mad at me when I pronounce and I'll say there are like multiple ways to say his name. People say Aragorn, right? That's one way. Aragorn, that's one way. Aragorn, where you kind of trill the R's a little. And whenever I say Aragorn, it drives people insane. They're like,
What?
why would you do that? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, do you know how to say his name? I'm like, yeah, it's in the appendices. And then they lose it even. And then they're like, Faramir. Start going crazy on me about that one. I'm like, I don't know.
The way I
So,
look at it is like I'm not a linguist. Like I'm just gonna say things how I say them. They're probably not right, but like I'm not losing any sleep over it. Well, I did have so another comment I get is that I am not a super big fan of The Hobbit. Like if I were to rank all of Tolkien's books, The Hobbit would probably be like my least favorite, and
of
it like
books.
really triggers people when that happens when they find that out. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not 8 years old.
I mean, I'm okay. I once again have like a really fantastic theatrical audiobook from this guy named Blue Fax on YouTube who did it. It's fantastic. I love it. But it's like I find myself when I read The Hobbit, is like I'll read parts of it. Oh, I feel like reading The Unexpected Party. What a fantastic chapter. Hearing about Gandalf and the colored rings being flung everywhere. Just like showing off like he does. Or, the discussion of like these tidbits of the Silmarillion. Barrel out of bonds. You're just like, whoa, what are they talking about? Oh, light elves, sea elves, deep elves, like elves who mine rocks and smithies. It's like, oh, the Noldor, the Vanyar, the Falmari, the Teleri. It's like, okay, that's such a random drop right there. Or like they mentioned like Gundabad, I think in there. And like Gundabad is like incredibly sacred location for Durin the Deathless. That's where he awoke. So it's like crazy. I look back at the Hobbit in that context, and I have this like annotated Hobbit or like I forget who the author is, but like I think I don't know. I'll go check in a sec. But overall, like that is really cool to see like the transition of the story of the Hobbit, where it was like the strong references to the Edda, and then all of a sudden like Blodorothan is Gandalf, and stuff like that, or talking about like how Bjorn came to be. So that stuff interests me a lot with the Hobbit now. But when someone asks me, a lot of people ask me all the time. That's another really common question. It's like, what order should I read the books in? I'm like, just read Lord of
Oh,
the Rings. What does it matter?
yeah.
Don't like stress about this because I could tell you the complicated way, or I could tell you like the straightforward. Just read the Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion. Done. Well, I want to read it in chronological order. Okay, well, Silmarillion, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. There you go. But then I'm like, I tell people if they're like really into it, and they're like, I really want to like learn more and more. I'm like, okay, well, read the Lord of the Rings, then go, or I'm sorry, read the Silmarillion, then read the first part of the Unfinished Tales, and the second part, and then go and read the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, and then read the third part and then go back and do it all again. And then you'll see like even more connections. But no one
Yeah.
wants to do that.
I do love how you can like go back to stuff like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
and find all of these little like it's almost like this little like Silmarillion lore is like sprinkled throughout. Like it's like you're eating a muffin and there's like blueberries in it.
right? You didn't ask for blueberries either.
Yeah.
You asked for a plain muffin, and all of a sudden there's like blueberries and chocolate
Yeah.
chips in there. You're
But
like,
you're like, these are delightful though.
I'm not mad. I didn't pay extra, so.
Yeah.
That's a really funny way of looking at it. Nice. So I guess my last thing I want to ask, I have two things I want to ask. First is, you do mention food in your books a couple times. What do you find to be the ideal Hobbit meal?
Okay, so every year I have a Hobbit party.
As do I. As do I. That's why I ask you.
Oh, okay. So I mean, the meal is quite large. I typically make a big shepherd's pie. I'll make like vegetable stew. Then we have like a big salad, and I call it like Yavanna's garden salad. And then there's like charcuterie. Hobbits love their like cold meats and cheeses and pickles. This is like a big meal though.
Oh,
And
that's
then
okay.
I make deviled eggs, and I call them Melkor eggs. Um, and then
That's good.
we usually also the last one that I can even remember is we have I get beef jerky, and I say like meat's back on the menu. And then I write man flesh. That's what it is. The when that orc in the movies goes man flesh. Um, So that's my Hobbit party meal. Whether that's a perfect Hobbit meal, I don't know. But
Sounds
when you have
pretty
a lot of
perfect.
people over, that's a pretty solid meal. Of course, lembas too.
Yeah, you got the little lemons in there. Now I'm trying to think of my own because I haven't thrown one in a year or two now because I've had a couple things come up. The last one I threw though, I went like so I did a Hobbit party and then I actually did a Christmas themed dinner for my family. My brother and I are really into cooking. I used to be a chef actually a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But overall, we decided to do Hobbit inspired meals with the Christmas ones. First meal I served was this egg dip that I made using soft boiled eggs and I
Ooh,
served it cold, like next to it with cold chicken, like you hear about in the start of The Hobbit.
yeah.
Then we also did like a fish soup in reference to Gollum. Well, my brother
Mm,
had caught like I think it was monkfish or kingfish or something off Florida and like frozen and brought it up, so it was fresh. It was really good. We did a mushroom risotto, like obviously all references to mushroom. And then we did a ratatouille because like just something from the garden, for a
yeah.
Hobbit. And then finally, we did two other things actually. We did a short rib, but then I did roasted mutton. I did a lamb leg,
Ooh,
and
that's
yeah,
awesome.
so
Yeah.
and like we did that as well, and like talked about, and each one had a card that we told the story about, like why was this reference Lord of the Rings. But when it came to the Hobbit party, like I make a giant shepherd's pie thing too. I make like this style of I use New Zealand lamb, so I make
Ooh,
lamb shepherd's pie, and then
nice.
I always make poppy seed or like seed muffins because like seed cake being the
Yeah,
almost same
yeah.
thing. And then I obviously make lembas, but I also make Bjorn's twice baked honey cakes, which I like just
Ooh,
make all the time if I'm feeling
yeah.
up for it. And then like soups, like you say, I make like usually a potato garlic soup to reference like, the stew. I have made rabbit stew before and I have smoked lamb before too for it as well. But like that's just me being a chef. I'm like I'm gonna
Yeah, I
go
was like,
super
oh my
hard.
gosh, this is like,
I got like two guys who come because I invite like 20 people. We watch all the movies. I got like two guys who are like sous chefs now. My brother shows up. This other guy we cooked the night before. We make like we do the whole thing. I have like white mead, like you're chilling with Galadriel and Celeborn and stuff like
yeah.
that. So I try to have as much fun with it. And then I do like a meme contest where like I do this whole thing a week before where like I'll create a group for it. I'll be like post the best meme. Whoever wins gets a prize. And I think we've done like a Sting letter opener, a mug from the Prancing Pony, and like a 30th edition Hobbit because I just had one laying around,
Yeah,
obviously.
of course, as you
And
do.
no biggie. And we did one of those. So like I try to make it as fun as possible, but I haven't done it in a while because like it is daunting. It's a
It
lot.
is. Yeah, I usually have a lot of people come from out of town for our Hobbit parties, and then so some
Really?
people will stay with us and they'll help me cook. And it's like we had to get a second fridge for our basement
Oh, I'm jealous.
And I
So
use it
jealous.
for the Hobbit party. And like, of course, I use it year round for other stuff too. But like, that was the main reason that we had to buy it because I was like, I literally can't. We'll probably have like 100 people come to the party. It's such a
A
big deal.
hundred people?
Yeah, and it's like it's usually
What?
a Friday night, Saturday afternoon into evening, and then we do like a Sunday brunch. So it's like it's a literal like weekend of food and parties, and it's crazy.
My gosh. Well, I used to do this in an apartment. Now I live in a house. So
Yeah,
maybe I gotta kick it up, you know?
yeah.
Maybe I gotta live a little more closely to Tea with Tolkien. Just kick it up.
And ours started like when our first one was when my husband and I were first married and we were still in college and it was just like a movie marathon with like 3 people. And then like just as life changes, it just gets bigger and bigger and now we're like we have our own house and like it's just completely out of control.
You got the kids running around, and you
We
have like a
do.
hundred people there, and the movies are on.
It's
I've seen a
literally
couple
like
things.
madness. Yeah, like we had so many kids here this past year. One of the kids like exploded a can of soda on one of the walls upstairs. I literally cleaned it this week. Like I just now found it and got to it because like they like it was just
They
absolute
didn't say
chaos.
anything.
Insanity. Yeah, no one told me anything. I was like, what's this on the wall? And like I'm still cleaning up from this big party that we had in September. So it's kind of a big I'm almost like, is it too big? I don't know.
No, no, I don't think
Yeah,
so.
it's
I think it
fine.
needs to be bigger. You know, you got to start renting out a place. That way, you can invite me and so many
Yeah.
others.
I've thought about that. I would love to someday do like how the Prancing Pony podcast does like their moots. Like,
That's
wouldn't
right.
that
You
be
went to
so
the
fun
last
if
one.
we Yeah, yeah, I did. But wouldn't it be fun if we had
Nice.
like a Hobbit party that people could come to?
You know, there's the whole thing with like I know the Middle Earth Enterprise has been doing their thing down in like
Yeah.
Kentucky. I want to say, but it's like a lot, you know. And then now there's Westmoot. Are you going to be attending Westmoot?
No, I'm not going to Westmont this year. I'm having a baby that week.
Just schedule didn't really work out.
I,
That's
I was planning to go, but plans change.
I might I'm gonna still try to go. I might not be able to. I'm worried about it being in Minneapolis, but
Me
that's a
too,
whole other
yeah.
story. But like for example, I will not be able to go to San Diego Comic Con this year because like a week before um, my wife's having a baby.
These babies.
It's like you're not coming with the Astro. I was like, you're
Yeah.
not gonna come with me. You don't want to like have the baby there during the Rings of Power. She's like, no,
You can
no.
name the baby, yeah, after someone in the Rings of Power. You get free Amazon Prime for life.
Ismail, you know,
Yeah,
Orondir. I'm sorry, he's my favorite character in the whole thing. So,
he's awesome.
he's so cool. All right, well, I think I'll end it with one last question. You know, firstly, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You like, letting me get a chance to read your book even before it's out.
Of
I
course.
thoroughly enjoyed it. It is so Tolkienian, and it's so, if I dare say it, Caitlin as well. You hear your voice, and I think that's what's most important in any book. That it doesn't just sound like words on paper. And I think I enjoyed that aspect mostly. And maybe I will go back and do a little more like Road Goes On to see like, a couple things that really matter to me. Like, maybe I'll buy a plant. Maybe I'll go look at something that really hits me deep for something I feel like I've sacrificed. But my last question, I think this question is really important to every Lord of the Rings fan out there. What is your favorite song in the books?
Oh, it's in Western Lands Beneath the Sun. That's the song that Sam sings when he's trying to find Frodo. And he's climbing up the tower, he gets to the top, and he just like sits down and kind of, he's like defeated. So the song starts out talking about like in Western Lands Beneath the Sun, there's flowers blooming, and then he's kind of reflecting on how he's like completely surrounded by darkness right now. But then as the song grows and like his hope is building with it, he's like recognizing that there's beauty in the world, even though I can't see it right now. And that alone is enough to kind of rekindle his strength. And he ends the song by saying, like, I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell. Like, even though he's in like the worst situation ever. And it's that song that actually Frodo hears it and it is what like reconnects them. It's how he finds Frodo, and it's through this song. So it's like his song of hope is like an act of defiance against despair. So yeah, it's like my favorite thing ever.
You know, that is, I did not expect you to pull that one out. That is like that's one of the best parts with of the whole like Tower of Dungle chapter. But if I had to choose, I kind of bounce around between a couple things. I always laugh at the bath song during like Conspiracy Unmasked. I'm like, okay, you know, I like a bath and a beer too. Um, and also the other one I really really enjoy is the Lay of Nimrudel. And
But
you know,
yeah,
there's the Nimrudel River, and it ties all in. It's such like and like people like you're going off again, Belmont. You're going off again. And I'm like, well, 1981 is when the Balrog awoke, and right around that same time is when Nimrodel and Amroth were going to leave Middle. And they're like, well, okay, chill. But I love that like deep history, and I love those aspects. Like even with like the fall of Gil-galad, you hear these aspects that you read about in the Silmarillion or you read about in the Unfinished Tales, and it becomes so much clearer. But when you're sitting there and you're reading these books for the first time, you're being plucked out of the story and you're brought into a whole world. And it's this idea of fairy, you know, like the idea of like the fairy story, plucking even the in character out of the quest of the ring. And now, like, you know, you have Frodo and Legolas. It's like, you know, and it's one of my favorite parts. To use it as an example. Like, Frodo and Legolas totally knew each other by name basis, were friendly and talking, where they both go and wash their feet in Nimrodel. And it's very like purifying moment after so much pain and darkness with Khazad-dûm and like Gandalf's fall into shadow. And like in that moment, Frodo feels somewhat healed. And I feel like that's like one of the few times that Frodo gets this reprieve from everything. You know, he still has the wound from the like Morgul blade. He's still going to go through so much, but in that small moment, you know, he got to do what he loved. The same thing he did with Bilbo. Get to hear about stories, hear his Homer's songs. You know, be relaxed and content in a moment of like, you know, utter utter sadness. So yeah, that one too is kind of heavy, but I dig it a lot. That and the
yeah,
bath song, like I said.
yeah. And
Completely opposite.
Finrod and the rap battle between Finrod and Sauron, of course, is
Oh,
also a
and
great
you
one.
bring that up too. You brought that up in your book. You were talking about Sauron and his power, and I don't like you didn't mention the Finrod song, and I was surprised. Like she didn't mention the song between like Finrod and Sauron in there, but that
Probably
too.
did in my drafts, but like there's so much that had to get cut because my editor is like, he's like, whoa, 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 I'm a casual Lord of the Rings fan, and we are
This
gonna
doesn't
lose
feel
our.
casual.
He's like, we're gonna lose our readers. So there was a lot that had to get cut because I would be kind of just like, I would be like, here's 2 paragraphs about the lore, and then he'd be like, let's get back to like the message of the chapter.
And you're like appendices though? Can we have
I
appendices?
do
Can
have
we push for the
appendices in the
appendices?
book.
I know that's what I
I
love.
think I have 5. So I was like, this
Yeah.
is a real Tolkien book.
Even what you like summarize like the Silmarillion and the
Yeah,
Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I was like, heck yes. If I ever wrote a book, I want an appendice too.
I know.
um, all right. Well, you know, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you want to shout out? Like shout out your own social media accounts or anything going on right now that you want everyone to know about? A book club, something else, something they should keep an eye out for.
Sure. My book club is reading my book in March and April. So if you want to like read my book with me and discuss it with other people, you can join our Discord. And then after that, starting in May, we're going to be doing like a long Lord of the Rings book club. So it's probably going to be like May through December or maybe even longer. So we're like just like taking it slow. Because right now we're reading the Silmarillion and we went at like a lightning speed. So I think it would be nice to have some kind of slow pace, like a meandering Lord of the Rings book club now. All of that is at teawithtolkien.com. So that's pretty much where everything is.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'll link that below. But, you know, just to say, I tried joining every book club, like, because a lot of everyone has, you know, tried to run a Lord of the Rings book club. I can't do it because I end up reading ahead. It's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much. You know, I can't wait for your book to come out. It is, you know, Into the Heart of Middle Earth, and it comes out February 20th. Can't wait for everyone else to read it and enjoy it just as much as I did it as well. But once again, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll speak to you all later.
Thank you for having me. This is so nice.